Most triathletes improve quickly in their first few years in the sport, but somewhere around year 3, 4 or 5, many athletes start feeling like they're no longer getting any better, and the reason is usually not what people expect. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many triathletes follow a similar pattern: strong early improvement, a few personal bests, and then a frustrating plateau where times stop improving despite continued training. In this video, we'll look at why that happens and, more importantly, what you can do to keep improving for many years to come. Here's what most people miss. When progress slows down, it's rarely because an athlete has reached their limit. More often, it's because their training stays the same. If you understand these patterns early, you can avoid the trap that keeps many athletes stuck at the same level for years. When someone first starts triathlon, improvements often come quickly. Simply training consistently across swimming, cycling and running produces big gains. Your aerobic fitness improves, your technique develops and your race experience grows too. In the first 2 or 3 years, it's common to see significant improvements in race times. But those early gains are partly the result of moving from relatively low fitness to a solid endurance base. Once that base is established, improvements naturally become smaller and harder to achieve. This is where many athletes feel as though something has gone wrong, whereas in reality it's simply the normal trajectory of endurance development. Progress continues, but it becomes more gradual. At this stage, patience becomes really important. Instead of chasing big improvements every season, the goal is to make small gains and build them up over several years. Another common reason athletes plateau is that their training begins to look the same every year. The same weekly schedule, the same long rides, the same long runs, similar intensity patterns. That consistency can be helpful, but over time the body adapts to familiar workloads. In fact, both sports science and decades of coaching experience show the same thing. The body responds best when training gradually progresses and it includes some variety. If training stays exactly the same for too long, improvement usually slows down or stops. In simple terms, the body stops being challenged in new ways. That doesn't mean constantly changing your training plan or trying something new every week, but it does mean gradually progressing your training. In practice, that might mean organising your training into phases with a different focus in each one, gradually building your training volume, introducing different types of interval sessions, or adding targeted technique work in the pool. Sometimes the change is surprisingly small, but it gives the body a new reason to adapt, such as joining a cycling club and joining them for a group ride once per week. Small adjustments like these can reignite your progress without dramatically increasing your overall training load. Another pattern I see quite often is athletes gradually adding more and more sessions. Maybe a third run each week, an extra ride or another swim session. Busy age group athletes can only fit so much training around work, family life and recovery. More sessions don't automatically lead to better performances. In fact, when training frequency becomes too high, you often accumulate fatigue without fully realising it. Your sessions might start to feel slightly harder, you never feel fully recovered, and the quality of your key workouts start to decline. That's one reason I often suggest around 6 sessions per week for many amateur triathletes, usually 2 swims, 2 rides and 2 runs. That structure allows you to train consistently without feeling constantly tired. Because being fresh really matters. When you feel relatively fresh, the quality of your training tends to improve significantly. As athletes gain experience, they often focus increasingly on their swim, bike and run volume. Strength work is often the first thing they stop doing, but strength training plays an important role in staying injury-free and moving efficiently. For example, if key stabilising muscles such as the gluteus medius and gluteus maximus are not activating effectively, your body often compensates elsewhere, like in your lower back for instance. In running, that can lead to subtle changes in your gait mechanics that lower your running economy and they increase the load on other structures such as your knees or lower legs. Over time, this can make you less economical and it also increases the likelihood of injuries such as IT band irritation or knee pain. Short, purposeful strength sessions help you maintain proper muscle activation, support efficient movement patterns and make your body more resilient to training load. And durability is a major advantage in endurance sports. Because athletes who improve the most over a decade are usually the ones who stay healthy enough to train consistently. In the early years of triathlon, improvements can be dramatic and personal bests come easily. The issue is when, after a few seasons, athletes often expect that same rate of progress to continue, but endurance performance doesn't develop in a straight line. At some point, improvements will come less often, and when they do, they'll usually be smaller. You'll also have periods where your fitness dips, especially after a race, a break from training, or a bout of illness. And that's completely normal. But if your expectations don't adjust to that reality, it can become really demotivating. You may feel as though you're constantly failing in your goals, even when you're actually still progressing in the grand scheme of things. And if that goes on for long enough, it can slowly take away the enjoyment people felt when they first got into the sport. Athletes who continue improving in triathlon for a decade or more tend to approach it differently. They understand that progress becomes more gradual and that it's not guaranteed, and they learn to enjoy the process of long-term development rather than chasing constant personal bests. One of the most effective ways to avoid a plateau is following a structured training plan that gradually evolves your training over time. This kind of balanced structure helps you improve without constantly increasing your training volume. If you're looking for a structured triathlon training plan designed for busy age group athletes, I've built a range of plans at MyProCoach, and you can check them out at myprocoach.net or via the link in the description. They're designed to be affordable and include rapid email coach support for whenever you need help. But whichever plan you do end up following, the key is making sure your training continues to evolve over time. Because in triathlon, long-term improvement rarely comes from simply doing more. It comes from training consistently, progressing gradually, and staying patient over the years. I'd be interested to hear from you actually. How long have you been doing triathlon, and have you experienced a plateau in your performance? Let me know in the comments. If you want to understand how to structure your weekly training more effectively, the video on screen now walks through one of the most important principles for sustainable endurance training. You can also explore the Beginner's Guide to Triathlon Training playlist for more advice on improving across swimming, cycling and running. And if you enjoy these videos, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.